Hey fellow creature, welcome back to Rooftop Talks. Today I want to start my video recording session with a collection of questions. Mainly I want to share these questions with other animal advocates to help you in your interactions with non-vegans, especially in things like Cubes of Truth, if you are with Anonymous for the Voiceless or We the Free or any of these organizations. They have their own methods, they have their own standard protocol, but in addition to those trainings, I've also been taking notes from many people that I've come across. I've been learning from a lot of the more experienced activists and advocates. I've been writing down questions that I think are particularly effective questions to get non-vegans and people who typically don't think of animals, getting those types of people to put themselves into the animal's position and to therefore activate their empathy with the animals. Usually an interaction with an animal rights advocate is the first time that people will ever be approaching the topic of animals with an empathetic view, where you're actually thinking, what about the animal's interest? What does the animal want from this? So these are questions that I've written down, and we'll get into them, we'll break them down. And this is by no means an exhaustive list. Some of these questions are context dependent and could be optimized even further. But I'm going to get into them. So these are questions to make non-vegans squirm. So the first one, do you consider yourself to be an open-minded person? I like this question, especially putting this question at the start. So everyone wants to answer this question with a yes. No one wants to say, I'm a closed-minded person. But it's like you give them that ego reward, right? For them to claim the identity of an open-minded person and say yes, they also have to prove it in the upcoming conversation. They have to hear you out, they have to engage, not walk away, and they have to engage with their whole attention and consciousness. There's something to it. Try it in your next conversation. It doesn't have to even be an animal rights conversation. Just try it when you're trying to persuade someone of a certain point or idea. Okay, this next one is a lot more specific to Cubes of Truth. Cube of Truth, if you don't know, they are where people will hold television screens in a cube formation and people will gather to see what the spectacle is about. And on the screens are footage, real footage of contemporary relevant footage of animals being killed in the standard ways. The footage is shocking. It's shocking, but it's totally legal footage of legal practices. A lot of people will just look at it and turn away immediately, and others will actually stay and watch for a long time, and you can actually see their expressions change on their face. You can see them, it's making a big psychological impact on them. There are people like me, animal rights advocates, who will come along and ask them if they would like to start a conversation. And some people are very open and they want to talk about it. And our hopes is that through conversation, through an open dialogue, some of these people who are impacted by the footage that they see will want to no longer participate in the industry that they find so abhorrent, to be consistent with their own values. So one of the questions that I ask at these Cubes of Truth, is this how we treat the innocent? Is this how we treat the innocent? I often point to the animals when I ask this question because I'm referring to the animals when I say the innocent. If they say, no, this is not how we treat the innocent, then they either have to contest that the animals are in fact innocent, in which case I would have to follow up and say, what crimes have they committed? What crimes have baby piglets committed that warrant the punishment of cutting off their tails when they are less than a week old, right? What crime has a battery hen committed to be caged where they can not even spread their wings and their feet are bleeding through grated floor? What crime has a mother cow committed to have her offspring taken away from her and to be hooked up to a painful milking machine and routinely raped and impregnated until that mother cow finally cannot produce milk anymore? Her udders will dry up and then is taken to the slaughterhouse with the other beef cattle. How are these animals not innocent? What crimes have they committed? If you say no, the footage is fake, they somehow faked it, it's taking place in another country, that can be a discussion as well. And then that gives me the opportunity to follow up and explain that this is routine, standard practice, it's legal, it's the most profitable and efficient way of farming these animals, of exploiting these animals through farming. So that's the kind of decision tree that it leads you down, right? And it propels the discussion forwards. But of course, most people, if they're being honest, this question, is this how we treat the innocent, is a way to field honesty. If they're being honest, they'll say, I suppose it is. This is how we treat innocent animals, and it's terrible. And so it gets them to realize the animals are being punished without having committed a crime. And these questions don't necessarily come in this order. Like I said, it's context dependent. Another question that I ask, and I learned this one from some more senior activists like Skyjack Morgan, he has a really great question which I think condenses a lot of complexity into a very simple question, and it's along the similar lines. He says, do you think the powerful should have the right to exploit the powerless? I almost lifted that from Skyjack Morgan, like word for word. And I love this because people do have opinions on power. Those opinions on power are typically applied to things like economics, class, race, sexism, things like that, human matters. And in most of those things, people are inclined to support the underdog, the victims of crimes, the victims of colonization, perhaps. They're inclined to support some kind of justice which levels hierarchies of power, which gives everyone a fair chance, right? And so it's asking them that question, but it's applying it in a new context which they hadn't yet considered, which is the question of humans and animals. Humans are undoubtedly the dominant power in the world when it comes to human supremacy, right? And therefore, do the powerful humans have the right to exploit the powerless? Now, some people bite that bullet and they will say, yes, it's a cruel world, Darwinism, natural selection, might equals right, the guy with the bigger gun wins. Okay, some people will bite that bullet, but then if they do, then they have to bite the bullet on all the other ways that is carried out. So they would have to bite the bullet that the Nazis had the right to invade Poland because they had the stronger military. And I don't think many people would want to say that. And that is what we do with animals, right? We are the powerful, we have more power, and we exploit the powerless. Piglets, chickens, cows, calves, they don't have power. They have no power against us. So what gives us the right to exploit them? This takes the discussion in a really productive direction. And most people, if they're being honest, they will follow us down this path and they will understand that in order to be consistent with their deeply held values and beliefs, that will lead them to a vegan conclusion. And they will have to go vegan to live in line with those beliefs. The next question, I ask this one all the time when it comes to dairy, because a lot of people are on board with at least some kind of vegetarianism. They can understand how hacking someone's body into little pieces and eating that is a form of abuse, whether it be a human or an animal. But the Overton window has not yet reached veganism, meaning that people just don't get it. They just don't understand why go the rest of the way to excluding dairy and other animal products from one's way of life, right? And they'll often bring up milk. They'll be like, okay, I understand the meat thing, but what about milk? Do you eat milk? And the thing I ask is, have you ever been to a dairy farm? Do you understand the process that they go through? Just to gauge how much they know. Often they don't know anything about dairy, other than that the milkman arrives at their door every morning with this liquid that tastes creamy. So my next question really just gets to the point. I ask, where are all the male cows on the dairy farm? What do they do with the males? I lead them straight there. And I ask them, where are the males? There's a range of answers that non-vegans will give, but all of them are quite, like, they're ignorant, right? So they'll be like, I guess there's like equal parts male and female on a dairy farm? No, no. They all have udders if you look. Udders are female organs, right? They're like, oh, they must have some males somewhere. I say, no, they drive them in at a certain season, or they deliver the sperm to the dairy farm. And what's done with that sperm, right? These canisters of bull sperm. It gets them to play the role of the investigator and to uncover that cows are raped on farms. The males are killed in the first weeks of being born. They're separated from their mothers. They will uncover all of this through questioning. And I only have to give certain information. I only have to lead them the way there, and they'll figure it out through first principles, right? They can figure out, okay, what's the most profitable way, what's the most durable, profitable way, most logistical way to run a cow's dairy farm or an egg farm. You don't just keep the males around who won't produce any dairy. You don't just keep the male chicks at the hatchery when you're selling egg-laying products, right? This is an exploitative industry that doesn't care about the individuals. They sell female products. So they do away with the males. Do the animals go willingly to the slaughterhouse killing floor? This question I adapted from something that Gary Yourofsky said. Gary made it a statement. He said, the animals do not go willingly. I just turned that into a question. Do the animals go willingly? And usually they'll say, I don't know. They don't go willingly. They have to be forced into the gas chambers, into the slaughterhouse, into the knock box. It starts to consider what the animal wants and look at the behavior of the animal and consider, what does the animal want? Is the animal afraid? Is the animal scared for their lives? Yes, absolutely. Just like your dog would be afraid if you took your dog to a slaughterhouse and shoved your dog in with the rest of the herd. How would your dog behave? There's no difference, just an animal. They're animals, right? They all have that drive to life, which makes them experience intense discomfort when they are aware that their lives are about to be ended by machines and by brutal psychopaths or victims. Depends on how you want to look at the people working in the slaughterhouse. This is one I took from Christspiracy. How would Jesus kill an animal that doesn't need to die? Great question to ask Christians, especially. You can adapt it to other religions. Usually they try and skirt around this question, try to dodge this question, but if they're forced to answer it, they're going to have to get into some details that are uncharacteristic of their idol, of their religious icon. Things that feel very out of character for Jesus. So it's a good one to make non-vegans squirm. It's one of the best ones. Another adaptation from this I learned is, are there slaughterhouses in heaven? I like that. It's so uncharacteristic. A slaughterhouse is so uncharacteristic of our higher beings, our higher selves. That's what heaven depicts, right? It depicts a place for our higher selves to be, a place of comfort where there's like a lack of the troubles of this world. Very uncharacteristic, very jarring to mentally place a slaughterhouse in heaven. But it asks that question, is it righteous that these temples of death and killer exist? And this is something within our control. We can choose heaven on earth, nirvana. Nirvana now was a saying by hippies in the 70s, 60s and 70s, which was about take that vision of heaven and try and create it here on earth. Try and live peacefully, right? And I really vibe with that. Great question to ask. Such a strong, offensive question, right? It's proactive. It's not defending. I don't like this whole debunking of myths against veganism. That puts us on the back foot. We need to be challenging the status quo with offensive questions. Enough with the defense. We don't need to play defense. Let's go on the offensive. And this is one of those offensive questions. How would Jesus kill an animal? I want details. I want to know. Would he use a knife? Would he use a bolt gun? Would he use a hammer? I want to know how he would kill a lamb, right? In a slaughterhouse or a pig. I want to know how Jesus would do it. How would Jesus kill an animal that doesn't need to die? There's plenty of greens, guys. We've got an abundance of greens, of veggies. Unfeeling veggies, no nervous system, no brain, no nucleus to experience pain and suffering. Jesus had these. Jesus is mostly a fictional character, of course, but he's meant to represent our higher ideals. Anyway, I'll move on to the next question. This is one that I ask when I have someone in front of me who agrees with everything I'm saying, with all the points that are being made. He sees the footage, feels for the animals, but just can't get motivated to change. Or just, I know what I need to do, but I'm not going to do it vibe. You get a lot of these at Cubes of Truth. And what I like to ask is, what would the best version of yourself do with this information? Let's think of the best version of yourself, the Chad version of yourself, if you like. What would they do when they realize that something that they've been doing, that they've been taught since birth, is normal, natural, necessary, and then they come to realize that is a gigantic lie propagated by a disgusting industry of apathetic, murderous killers? Oh my God, there's a hummingbird. It was just here, it's just here. I was thinking like, that's a big moth. It was definitely a hummingbird. I saw the little tiny snout. So anyway, sorry about the interruption. Lost my train of thought now. Oh, he just flew at my head. Okay, there is a hummingbird around here. I'm amazed. All right, and a follow-up question to the what would the best version of yourself do is I like to engage with their history and who they are as a person. Think of the top 5 greatest adversities in your life, the greatest difficulties, the greatest obstacles. Just think of the top 5. Where would it rank in your top 5 or in your top 10, top 20? Where would this rank? Changing some of your purchasing habits to not involve animals, like changing some of your cooking ingredients, keeping your favorite meals, but just changing where they're sourced from by reading the backs of labels and choosing vegan alternatives, like making that adjustment to your lifestyle. How does that rank in your life for the greatest challenges, right? Because for me, that's not top 10. That's not even top 20. It's a walk in the park. And usually that reframes the question as an inconvenience, a chore. It's not hard. That's the conclusion. It's not hard at all. So then go do it. I have some other questions as well. I like these as rhetorical questions to make you think. The nice thing is you can throw these questions at anyone at any time because it's meant to provoke thought. So if there's nothing wrong with slaughterhouses, why don't we take kids on school trips to see slaughterhouses? Because it's giving them a question there. Again, it's an offensive question. It's giving them a question that they have to deal with. Why don't we arrange school trips there? Why don't you want your kids to see it? Why would your kid cry for the rest of the day if they witnessed what went on in a slaughterhouse? Why is that? If they're natural, right? They're natural, it's a natural part of life. Inseminating a mother cow is a natural part of the human experience. Take your kids to see it. Educate your children. And the thing is, if they bite the bullet on that and they say, yeah, okay, we'll take our kids to see slaughterhouses, that's a huge win for us because majority of those kids will never want to eat animal products ever again, right? That's checkmate. If it's natural to eat animals and to eat the products of animals, like dairy, then why don't we, in an effort to whet people's appetites, biological predators, to turn them on, to make them really salivate, why don't we show slaughterhouse footage in supermarkets? Right where the beef section is, we just show cows being killed. We just show the cows being milked and impregnated in the dairy section. We show the chickens and the whole process of the chickens. We show the barn shed with the chickens, the de-beaked chickens where they've had their beaks cut off with a hot blade. We show the whole works, the whole process, right? Why would that, they should salivate at that because it's natural, right? We're natural predators, right? They might bite the bullet and say, yeah, go on, let's put it in. Great. The world will be vegan before we know it, okay? So the way out by biting that bullet, if they say yes, then we accelerate towards veganism. If they say no, then they have to admit faults. They have to admit it's a disgusting industry, that it's wrong, that it's oppression, it's violent oppression. And at the very least, they need to be welfareists. Of course, welfarism we can get into. We can go down the topic of welfarism, explain how it's ineffective, how it's a form of coping, by guilty people with guilty consciences. But that leads us on to another productive topic to talk about anyway. So I love these kind of questions. Again, they're offensive questions, right? Challenging the status quo. We don't need to be on the back foot. In conversation, let's go with these short questions I use in Cube of Truth. Someone's fixated at the screen, they're looking at the screen, and there's little things I want to be going through their mind as they're processing this footage. I don't want them to just see a horror show, a horror movie with grisly footage, right? I want them to be asking questions as to why this is happening. So I'll ask things like, is it necessary? Does the animal want that to happen to them? Putting them in the animal's point of view. Where do you see yourself in this? Making it about them, their participation, because they participate when they go to the supermarket. Are you proud of that? This is when a non-vegan will start confessing to you. They'll start to say, oh, I hunted a deer and it's natural. I went out with my buddies. It was a great time. I will ask, are you proud of that? If they're being honest, they will probably share something like, actually, no, I was quite ashamed of myself. I still think about that day. Things like that. Or I did cry a lot at first. When my dad first took me out hunting and I killed my first bird, I was really upset. And then over time, I hardened myself to it. If the person is being honest. If they're not being honest, then that just gives me a reason to disengage. I can disengage with someone who's dishonest and talk with someone who's being honest. For me, I'm looking to actually disqualify someone from the conversation because I only want to spend my time with honest people. I only want to talk and appeal to honest people. Those are the only ones I'm going to be able to actually make a meaningful change with. Is this fair? Is this fair? That's such a simple question. 3 words. Is this fair? While they're watching the footage, is this fair? This disgusting horror show, this abuse, is this fair? Works like a charm. Is there any justice in this? I like to appeal to justice. I think justice is very important. It's a cornerstone of our civilization. If we do away with concepts of justice, things crumble very quickly. Justice is such an important word. I don't care that there's been a huge media campaign against social justice warriors. We need to hang on to this idea, this concept, this core tenet of justice. Without it, we are in a very bad place as a society. People realize that. Most vibe with social justice. They might say social justice has gone too far, but they understand there's a kernel of truth in there. No matter what the media is distorting or what direction people are pulling it in. And then my final question I ask sometimes, is this the best we can do? Appealing to our higher selves, is this the best we can do? For someone to say, yes, this is the best we can do, is such a pathetic answer. It's such an unimaginative, fatalistic, defeatist stance that it feels like I've won. If they say, yes, this is the best we can do, I can just be like, mic drop. I'm done. My opponent's just defeated himself. The person I'm engaging with has shriveled into a little lump on the floor. Or they can rise up. They can rise up and realize that we are not doing the best we can. We are falling far short of our potential as human beings. That's the real conclusion I want them to come to. So it gives them a choice. Is this the best we can do for the animals and for ourselves? These are the questions. I'm going to say the questions again. Do you consider yourself to be an open-minded person? Is this how we treat the innocent? Do you think the powerful should have the right to exploit the powerless? Where are all the male cows on the dairy farm? What do they do with the male chicks in the farms? Do the animals go willingly to the slaughterhouse floor? How would Jesus kill an animal who didn't need to die? Are there slaughterhouses in heaven? What would the best version of yourself do in response to this information, in response to this realization, perhaps I should say? Think of the 10 hardest struggles in your life. Where would going vegan rank on the list? If there's nothing wrong with slaughterhouses, why don't we take school kids on school trips to see slaughterhouses for themselves? And the in conversation, short questions. Is it necessary? Is it necessary? Does the animal want this to happen to them? Where do you see yourself in all of this? Are you proud of that? Is this fair? Is there justice in this? Is this the best we can do? Those are my questions. I hope this arms you with a lot of ammunition for your conversations, whether it be with strangers, members of the public, acquaintances, friends, family, you name it. These questions work from what I can tell. These are potent questions to get people thinking. It's the Socratic method. It gets them to engage with their whole mind, and it sorts out the liars from the truthful, from the honest. That's the end of the video. See you in the next one. Goodbye.
Daughter.
Did you do it?
Yes.
What did it cost?
Everything.